Alwin Albright was a 74-year-old from Gilmer, Texas. He lived alone, but had a multitude of brothers and sisters. On July 6, 2019, Alwin allegedly tried to force his way into his girlfriend's apartment. She called the police. When they showed up at the complex, Alwin walked off. He was never seen again. I'm Ed Denzel, and this is Unfound. I've come to discover over the last few months, with the help of my assistant CHARLEY, that I have not been clear when I've used the term that is the title of this episode. My apologies. What I personally mean by those words is that nobody caused the person's disappearance. There were no outside influences, that it wasn't an abduction, it wasn't a murder. There was no foul play. Specifically, it means that one of three things happened. The person left to start a new life somewhere, the person left to commit suicide, and he or she just hasn't been found yet, or the person had intentions of coming back, but an accident happened. Of course, the tough part in these types of cases is figuring out which of the three it is. And in fact, maybe it's none of them, and that foul play was the cause, but it's just not evident. And that brings us to the disappearance of Alwin Albright. Video shows him leaving the premises when the police showed up, and not coming back. But could he have returned? Is this case, or is this case not an example of the walk-off? And now a summary of the case. This is brought to you by my friend Megan Good's website, charleyproject.org. Alwin Albright was a family guy. In fact, until a year before his disappearance, Alwin had lived on the family property in another part of Gilmer. Keeping with the family theme, Alwin worked in the family business of wood pulp until he retired in his 60s. He had been married, but got divorced and had a son. He was a simple guy who liked to get out and see what friends and family were doing. However, in living in the apartment complex on his own for a year generated a couple issues. Alwin had a girlfriend who had another boyfriend. In addition, Alwin and that other guy had a run-in, in which Alwin chased him off with a pocket knife. So, on July 6th, 2019, Alwin had seemingly allowed his quote-unquote girlfriend, Amanda, to drive a car he'd just bought from a neighbor. When she came back, while pulling in, Amanda hit the curb, upsetting Alwin. This allegedly led to Alwin trying to force his way into Amanda's apartment. In response, she called 911. The police arrived just before 1:30 p.m. Minutes after that, a camera on the premises caught Alwin walking down the road and behind a building near the edge of the property. There's no proof he ever came back to his apartment. He was never seen again. A search of the area yielded nothing. However, when looking in his apartment, his family discovered items missing and a window open. Some of the toughest disappearances to analyze on Unfound are ones in which there is evidence of both a voluntary departure and foul play. Although it doesn't seem possible, it is often the case that a fact can point in both directions. But we will try to do our best in figuring out what happened to Alwyn. It starts by contemplating these three questions. Number one, even though the car was Alwyn's, who moved it to a different parking place after he went missing? Number 2, is it a coincidence that Amanda expressed interest in the very items that went missing from Alwyn's apartment? And number 3, should we be concerned that Amanda's other boyfriend, Mavis, has a long criminal record? Alwyn's family is open to all possibilities regarding his case. The guest for this episode is Alwyn's niece, Sherry Sullivan. Unfound News. I got to do an interview with one of my favorite people and fellow Star Trek actor from my Las Vegas days, April A. Bear, this past Monday. She hosts the podcast Think It Through, the Clear Thinking Podcast. My episode with her should be coming out within the next few weeks. I will let you know when that happens. Next, the pretrial proceedings have started regarding the murder of Tyler North. We covered his disappearance during September 2019. The people charged are his ex-wife, Lena Michelle Collette North, and her boyfriend, Jeremy Lewis. But please remember, Tyler has still not been found. Finally, we had another great Unfound on the Ground session this past Monday for our premium Patreon members. The groups are small for these tutorials, but they are in-depth, and I believe the members are learning a lot. Where you can find Unfound. Unfound supports accounts on Podomatic, iTunes, Spotify, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Deezer, and YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, please join us for the Unfound Live Show. All of you can talk with me, and I can answer your questions. Contribute to Unfound at patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. This week, I need to thank Charlotte and Miranda. You can also contribute at PayPal, paypal.me/Unfound Podcast. The email address, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. Merchandise. The books at Amazon.com in both ebook and print form. Do not forget the reviews. Shirts at unfound-podcast.myshopify.com, or you can track down my assistant Heather in the Facebook group. Playing cards at makeplayingcards.com/sell/unfound podcast. The website, theunfoundpodcast.com. And please mention Unfound at all true crime websites and forums. Thank you. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the niece of Alwin Albright, Sherry Sullivan. Sherry, welcome to Unfound.
Thank you, sir.
Let's start here. You are the niece of Alwyn. How did it come to be that you are representing his family? Of course, you're being interviewed for this program. How did that come to be?
The siblings of Alwyn, Alwyn's the youngest, so the siblings are much older, and they're advancing in age pretty quickly, and they were getting very stressed, so I assured my relatives that I could take over and handle the situation for them.
Well, that's very kind of you, Sherry. So have you been doing this since basically the beginning, let's say July of 2019, or was this something that happened later?
Alwyn started missing in July 2019, and I took over the 30th of July.
Okay.
So the end of the month.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you. How has this been overall? Of course, we're going to get into everything that you experienced at the time, how you found out that he went missing, but I'm guessing that you never figured in your life that you'd be doing something like this.
Not anything I imagined, no, sir.
No. Okay. Of course. And as with everybody, I think most of the guests on the program, they just kind of have to figure it out as they go. Maybe I should ask you this: being that you are the niece of Alwyn, does Alwyn not have any grandchildren or children?
He does not have grandchildren. He has one adult child.
Okay. and maybe we can talk about that person here in a bit. So that's how you came to be responsible, and that's how you came to be on the program. Maybe we should talk about this. How many siblings does Alwyn have? And I'm guessing either your father or mother is his sister slash brother. What's the relationship there?
Okay. Alwyn is one of six. He is the baby. My father is the second oldest of the six, and the oldest surviving sibling.
Oh, okay. All right. So even though Alwyn is 74 years old, he is the baby.
He is the baby. Yes.
Wow. He was 74 when he went missing. Wow. Okay. So he has siblings who are then into their 80s, easily into their 80s.
My dad is 90 years old.
Oh my gosh. Sherry, wow. And he's still with us.
He is still with us.
Well,
yes.
Awesome. That's good to hear. All right, great. All right, so maybe that is very explanatory to the listeners then why you are doing this. All of his siblings into their 80s, if not 90s. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Alwyn himself. You said that he does have one child. Was he married? Did he get divorced? We know that he was living by himself at the time of his disappearance, but let's just talk about him, what you know about him, your interactions with him.
Alwyn is divorced. He visited family on a daily basis.
He did. Okay.
When his people quit working, he was actually on his way to visit one of the brothers.
Oh, okay. And what did he do? What did he do with his life? Did he have a job? Did maybe he serve in the military? Anything like that? What do you know about his vocations?
Alwyn was the only brother that did not serve in the military. He did continue with the family business of pulpwood hauling and retired from that job.
Oh, okay. And with him, how well would you say? Of course, he would be your uncle, and I did not have that many aunts and uncles growing up, but how well would you say you personally knew Alwyn? How often did you talk to him? How often did you see him when he was around?
I probably saw Alwyn 1 to 2 times a year. We had family reunions on a regular, once, 2 times a year. And he sat with us, talked with us. He actually loved to just sit and talk with people and visit. Okay.
And so I'm guessing then that your family is centered right around that Gilmer, Texas area?
The majority of the family lives in Gilmer. My dad and one other brother lives in the neighboring town.
Okay, well, that's nice that everybody's close like that. Okay, and as you stated, of course, he's into his 70s, so I guess we shouldn't be too surprised that he was retired. From what you saw, how was he spending his retirement? Did he take up any hobbies, anything like that that you know?
No hobbies, just, I guess you could call his hobby going to the local stores like the tire shop, the gas station, the laundromat, and a little hangout house that he just went to and visited if he wasn't going to a family's house. Mm-hmm. That's how he spent his.
All right, so he wasn't into, I guess as an example, he wasn't into golfing or anything like that. He just liked to go and meet his friends and family.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, and do you happen to know, if you can remember, how long had he been living at the area where he disappeared, in that apartment complex where he disappeared? Any idea how long he had lived there?
I don't know for sure. I would say that it was a year or less.
Oh, it wasn't very long.
Yeah, it wasn't a permanent home for him. He had lived out at the family home front, and he moved into town just so he could be closer to people, so he could visit with more people.
Oh, okay. So I guess what you're saying then, going back to, let's just say 2017, was he living with people in your family, or was this just like he was living by himself but on the family property? How do you remember it?
Right. Yeah, he lived on the family property in the house that he grew up in.
Okay.
And he lived alone.
Okay. All right. And how do you think what you saw, what you observed, or what you heard, maybe from your aunts and uncles or other maybe cousins? How was Alwyn doing, living on his own? Maybe out in that apartment complex, a little away from family. How was he doing over the course of that year? Your impressions?
Oh, he was fine. He was happy to be where he was. There was never a dull moment. In other words, there was always someone he could see and visit. And health-wise, it's always nice to be happy when you're getting older, right? Age quicker.
Sure. And maybe that's we usually would not talk about this on an episode of Unfound. We haven't covered the disappearance of too many people into their 70s, but how was his health? 74 years old. What you know about it, I'd never asked to go into any private stuff, but just in general, how healthy was he?
He was rather healthy. He did have high blood pressure, and he did take medicine for the blood pressure. He called medicine his heart medicine.
Okay. But no, maybe I'll just bring up some things like a heart attack or cancer. Never had any issues like that? To your
Nothing diagnosed to that.
To your knowledge. Okay. Being that he had a son, did they get together very often? Did the son live in the area? How did they get along? Do you know anything about that?
They got together on occasions. It wasn't like a daily basis family member, but they did reunions.
So they got together once in a while. Would you say that they were close?
I don't know. How is a son father relationship? I think it's typical. You get to argue, so don't talk to each other for a little while, and then you get along again. I just think it was one of those relationships.
Okay, I can relate. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about Alwyn. Ever have any problems with the law?
To my knowledge, no. Okay. He did not have, I guess you're asking DUI.
Something like, anything like that. Yeah, this is the more serious things, yeah.
No, sir.
I'm not worried if he got a speeding ticket or jaywalking. I'm just asking, did he behave himself in his later years?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on. So we have a good sense of Alwyn, close with family, moved away from his family about a year before he went missing, but close with them, knew, I guess, some of his nieces and nephews, all in that general area of Gilmer, Texas. But once again, living on his own. He'd just been doing that for a little while. And let's move on to this, though. And in a way, I think we have to talk about this because in some way, maybe this could be a little bit of a factor in his disappearance. And you had told me that Alwyn, even though he was in his 70s, had never learned to read. And in fact, you told me that sometimes he needed help paying his bills, reading things. Is that just a factor of education, or did he maybe have dyslexia, or did he have some sort of learning disability? What do you know about that?
Alwyn even would tell you he had trouble placing letters together to understand and formulate words. In the 1950s, they didn't have things like dyslexia, but it does run in the family. So we believe that was probably his disability, so to speak, in school. And schools wasn't really taught to deal with that, or trained to deal with that situation. And so his sister, who's only 1 year older, she always watched out for him because of having trouble learning, school kids was not very nice. They were pretty cruel, made fun of him, so he quit school at a very early age.
No, okay. And then that, of course, did not help his learning either, and learning to read and other things. Could he write? Couldn't write either?
He could write his name.
Okay.
He could write his name on a check. That was about all.
Okay. All right, and maybe that wasn't a big a factor, being that he did work for his family, and of course his family, your family would have known that, and so he would just stick to those jobs where he could best use the skills that he had, and maybe writing was not one of those skills. Is that something maybe that people, to talk to Alwyn, would anybody realize this?
Probably not.
Okay.
That probably was something that was recognized unless they knew him very, very well.
Okay. So it doesn't sound to me like it was an IQ issue or something. It was just maybe, like you said, dyslexia, something like that. Okay. So that I just wanted to bring that up because I think that needs to be known as we move into some of these other things. Let's move onto this, and we're just going to talk about her in general terms. Who is Amanda Garcia? And I put that in quotes because I still have a question as to whether that's her real name. But in any case, who is Amanda Garcia?
Amanda is a lady that he said was his girlfriend. She lived across the drive in a different apartment unit of his apartment complex. And he claimed her as his girlfriend.
Okay. Had you personally did you ever hear him refer to her as his girlfriend? You personally?
We never talked about her.
Okay.
When I was with him, we never had a conversation.
Okay. So am I to then understand that these two did not know each other until he moved into that complex?
That's a very good chance, yes.
Okay. Do you know if he ever brought her around? You said he'd like to go see family, he'd like to go out. Did he bring her to any parties that your family had? Maybe a family reunion, maybe Thanksgiving, anything like that? Do you know?
I never met her. I don't think that he brought her around.
Okay. All right. But overall, if you did not ever meet her, can you state anybody in your family who met her? Anybody at all?
I did have a few family members who had met her at the apartment complex.
Okay. And this would have been after he went missing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it was.
All right. So he's living there for about a year. It seems to me that they did not know each other beforehand, but she's we're guessing in her 50s or into her 60s. He's early 70s. And they meet up, and as you've already heard, the listeners have already heard, that he's referring to her as his girlfriend, which is great, but they don't live together. She has her own place. He has her own place there. But let's move on to this, and it seems, though, that Amanda did have another man in her life, and this guy's name is, excuse me, she did have another man in her life, Mavis Waters. And is this a man that your family knew about? Had Alwyn ever mentioned him before he went missing, or did you not hear about him until after?
Alwyn had an argument or fight with Mavis, so my aunt had heard about him before. I don't know that anyone met him. I did not learn about Mavis until I was talking to the detective.
Okay. And regarding this incident, are we then to understand that at the time that it happened, that Alwyn did tell other family members about it? This is something that was known before he went missing?
Yes.
Okay. Can you, I know you weren't there, but to the best of your knowledge, what, the way you understand it, what was this incident that he had with Mavis, who was another resident in that apartment complex?
Mavis and Alwyn had gotten in a fight, and Alwyn said he chased him off with a knife, pocket knife.
So Alwyn, just so I understand this, Alwyn had the knife and he chased Mavis off.
Yes, sir.
All right, so in contrast to Mavis having the knife and chasing Alwyn off. So something went on, and Alwyn thought he had to defend himself, and he chased Mavis off with a pocket knife. Okay. Did Alwyn give any additional details why this happened? Did this have something to do with Amanda, or were they drunk, or do we have any idea why this even happened?
No, sir. We don't know the details.
Okay, no details. And do you even know how long this happened before Alwyn went missing?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. Did Mavis or Alwyn ever call in a police report for this? I mean, you get a knife out that, of course, it's a pocket knife. Pocket knives can hurt. Any idea if a police report was ever filed? Anybody call 911? Anything like that?
No, I talked to the detective, and he did not have any police reports that he shared with me from either one of those two.
Okay. All right, so we have this incident. I don't know if there were any other witnesses to it, but Alwyn ended up telling some people in your family about it before he went missing, and we still don't know, why this happened and what Mavis had to say about this or anything else. It is curious to me that, if Mavis did get chased off, and this happened the way Alwyn described it, it is a little surprising to me that Mavis didn't call the police. One of them didn't, but it seems that's what happened. Nobody did anything. Okay, so let's move on to this. You've already kind of mentioned it, that Alwyn had a car and it broke down. When did it break down? How soon, how close to his disappearance date? Do you know what happened? What do you know about his previous car and it breaking down?
His previous car was an older car, maybe early 2000s, and he was driving into the neighboring town to visit one of the brothers, and the engine blew up.
Oh my.
And that was the 1st or 2nd of July, just the earlier the week that he disappeared.
Wow, that close.
Yes.
That close. Okay, I'm not even sure that I knew it was that close. I knew it was maybe within the month, but just a few days. Okay, so his car breaks down, and this is still something that is still a big question mark. We're going to try the best to cover it. He got another one, it seems, fairly quickly. I mean, before he disappeared. So within those 4 days, but there's still a mystery regarding it. Do you happen to know who he got this other car from? It was a black Mustang, I would say 1990s. I've seen you shown me pictures of it, 1990s Mustang. Do you know who he bought it from?
I was given the name from the detective that sold the car to him. He lives in the apartment.
All right, and we're not going to name his name. We're just going to leave it out of it. But so you did find out that he did buy this car from another person in the apartment complex. But the way Alwyn, I guess, described it to people is that he was making payments on it.
Yes, and the person did confirm that with the detective, that there was $50 paid down with an agreement to pay the rest off. I do not know what the rest of the agreement was.
Okay, so even if it's a 1990-some Mustang, paying $50 at a time, it's probably going to take a while. Do you know if Alwyn gave this guy any money up front?
He just gave him the $50 down.
Okay. Now, in our previous conversations regarding this, there was something having to do with the keys, that he bought it, but Alwyn wasn't allowed to have the keys. Have you any clarity on that since we first spoke about it, Sherry?
No, the agreement, he told my uncle about car. He was trying to get a replacement car since his blew up. Mm-hmm. And find a loan on the 3rd. He tried to get a car loan, and that was declined. So he was trying to find some type of transportation, and this agreement, he said, was going to be $500 with $50 down. And my uncle said, don't buy that. That's not a good car to buy. And he bought the car within 72 hours of disappearing.
Huh. So I guess what you're saying is he kind of went against a recommendation that he got and began the purchase of this car anyway.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know? Did he do anything with his insurance? Did he transfer insurance? Did he have insurance? Does anybody even know?
Well, I don't know from the detective. The detective has not given me any details because I've asked, was there any insurance involved? Was the agreement, like, was he going to owe the other $450 within the month?
Yeah.
He was the keys when it was paid off. Alwyn wanted the car pretty badly, so I don't think it was going to be several months to pay off. He probably had a very short-term agreement.
Right.
But I have not been in connection.
I would agree with you on that. And maybe we just need to determine, not that you would personally know about all of his finances. Did Alwyn have some money? Was he a poor guy? Or did he live very modestly? What would you say?
Alwyn was not a man of money. Alwyn had $200 from selling the car that blew up, and right there at the same time was his Social Security that came in, and that would have been all the money he would have had on him because he cashed. He went and took a withdrawal of his money to be able to pay his apartment.
Okay. And so he didn't didn't have some sort of 401k or investments. Once again, to your knowledge, not that you would know his finances, but to your knowledge.
Most likely, he did not.
Okay. All right. So this neighbor, maybe that Alwyn knew, maybe he trusted the guys. The guy said, "Hey, I'll help you out. I got this car." And $500 car. I don't know what the quality of it's going to be, but Alwyn decided that's what he wanted to do and was going to be paying this guy $50 maybe every month, maybe every other week. We're just not sure, but it was going to be in cash. Overall, going back to July of 2019, around this time, how do you think your family was feeling about Alwyn? Did they feel that he was living a good life? Were they worried about him? Any concerns? Any signs? Of course, once again, he's 74 years old. Any signs that maybe he's losing his memory? Anything like that at all, to your knowledge?
The family, my uncle saw him pretty much every day in the week. Not weekends, but on the weekdays. They... Of course, they're all older siblings, so they always worry about baby brother. Yeah. Once you're the baby, you're always the baby. It doesn't matter your age.
Right,
and,
that's right.
Knowing that he didn't read real well, I'm sure they probably babied him a little extra. And they would take meals by to him to make sure he had eaten. Knowing that he didn't have a lot of money, my uncle might, pass him $20 or something here or there, so to make sure he had gas. So he was not a rich man at all.
Okay, but they were once again not worried about him, and no signs of deterioration in any way. I have an 84-year-old father, so I know that's like. I'm very fortunate that he has his mind. He's very physically capable, etc. But we know people get into their 70s, we start maybe noticing those types of things. Nothing like that.
No, sir.
Okay. All right. For the listeners, we're going to talk about the rest of this in a little bit different way, being that really nobody was around Alwyn at the time. Of course, he lived alone. We're going to get into the details of what we believe to be the disappearance date of July 6th. But of 2019, but we're going to do this in a little bit different way. Instead, we're kind of going to jump ahead and then kind of go back. I think that's the best way to cover this. Sherry, when did somebody in your family realize that, something wasn't right? They hadn't heard from Alwyn, they hadn't seen him, anything like that. Who was that person? What was the date? And what went on? How did that all happen?
Alwyn, like I said, would go up to the laundromat where my uncle worked on a daily basis, and he did not come up on the 8th, which is Monday of the week he was missing. So he did not see Alwyn, so he went by after work and didn't answer the door. Well, maybe he's out, so he goes on his way. Tuesday comes around, and Alwyn still doesn't come to the laundromat, so he goes by, and he doesn't get Alwyn to answer the door, so he goes home and gets my aunt, and they start looking around and asking around. On Tuesday, the 9th, call another sibling, and so there's several family members looking around for a few days. And finally, on Thursday, the 11th, is when one of the siblings decided maybe we should call a report in for a missing person.
Okay. Let me just ask you a little bit about that. So when they say looking around, does that mean like walking the complex? Does that mean driving around Gilmer, Texas? What does that mean looking around from him? What does that mean to you?
All of the above. Walking the complex, going around asking residents, when's the last time you've seen him? Have you seen him lately? Driving around through town, going through the areas that would be his places to hang out and or sit and talk with people. They were checking all of those common areas.
Okay. And maybe we should establish this right now. Alwyn did not have a cell phone?
He did not have a cell phone.
All right, so not very easy to call him. Maybe they were trying to call him. Maybe he had a house phone. I mean, it's very rare these days, but some people do. But we automatically think of cell phones here in into the 21st century. So that kind of is not a possibility in this particular disappearance. So they're looking around for him. And do you know, in those days between, let's just say, the 8th to the 11th, when they went to the complex, did they ever encounter Amanda Garcia?
Yes. Amanda came up to them. Let's see, before the 11th.
Yeah, before the 11th.
I would say no.
All right. So, being that they were around the complex asking people, it doesn't, once again, it may have happened, but to your knowledge, it doesn't seem like they ever happened to run into Amanda, even though she lived right across the street.
Yes.
Okay. In that complex, do you know, is there like a building manager or somebody, of course it's owned by somebody who's responsible for the property? Did they talk to that person? Do you know if they happen to run into that person? Somebody that, oversees the maintenance, the landscaping, things like that.
Yes, that was after the report was made.
Okay, so that wasn't until after. So they did not encounter this particular person before the 11th.
Correct.
Okay. Do you know, being that we talked about this car and it's a black Mustang, like I said, what I would call late 1990s era Mustang. Do they remember the Mustang being there when they were looking around?
Yes.
It was there. Okay.
It was regular parking space.
Okay, so it was there, but he's not around. I'm guessing that the door to his place was locked?
Correct, yes.
Okay. All right, but he is not around. Were there any, once again, the listeners know how I like to be very technical with this, but to your knowledge, any lights on, anything, and the TV on inside, anything when they were looking around there?
I don't think Alwyn had a TV.
Oh, he didn't.
I'm not sure he had a radio.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
He was. was very poor. If you didn't give it to him, he didn't own it.
Okay. And where were you at the time? Of course, you have your own life to live. Of course, Alwyn is an uncle, but you have your own things going on. How did you find out that Alwyn had not shown up to the laundromat on the 8th, on the 9th, etc.? How did you find out about this?
I learned about that once there was a report made. It was following the report. I am the sole caregiver of my elderly father and mother, so I had no idea they were out there looking for Alwyn for a week.
Wow. And so they're in there, you already stated that your father is in his 90s, and they're going around the complex looking for him.
For Alwyn, yes.
Wow. Okay, that is spectacular.
Well, my dad,
yeah,
we had to ask the family. There's a family member that will call and give their troubles and their sorrows and their problems, and it just makes my dad worry.
Yeah.
So I had to ask them that you need to keep those things to yourself and or contact me so I can talk to my dad in appropriate time. So, I'd like to hope they were just trying not to worry him about that.
Right. All right, so we have these older people in their 70s, 80s, if not older, concerned about Alwyn and actually going to that complex and looking for him.
Yes.
Okay, and of course with no luck, seemingly never ran into Amanda, even though Alwyn called her his girlfriend for whatever reason. Maybe just did not happen. We just don't know. I'm not trying to be suspicious regarding that, but that didn't happen. And then you finally find out, and you've brought up this report that was eventually filed. Was that done on July 11th?
There was a 911 call, and then an hour or so later, when my aunt had transportation, she was taken to the police station to finalize the report.
Okay. All right, and that's how this all gets started. He doesn't show up and this is very common in disappearances. People have a pattern, whether it's going to work or seeing friends or going to a club or the gym or something, and those things stop happening, and it's usually a very good way to determine when a person went missing. Of course, cell phone usage, of course, we all know is another good way to determine when a person has gone missing. So once this report is filed, do the police go out there? Does somebody let them into the apartment, etc.? What goes on after this report is filed on the 11th?
The way I understand it is on the 12th, a detective was assigned. My aunt is trying to find something out on Monday following the 12th, and she can't get the detective. For whatever reason, he's not in the office. So she just went to the apartment complex, and the maintenance person, I believe it was, the maintenance person let her in to check and see was his medications there, did he pack a bag and go somewhere, and discovered everything seemed, his medications was there, everything seemed like he must be staying here. However, the window was open and the bed was pulled away from the wall.
Okay, let me ask you, thank you for that. Let me ask you a couple questions once again, the way you understand it. When you say a window, this window, it was open. Would this window be big enough for a human to crawl through?
It is.
Okay.
And it's kind of low as well.
Okay.
So it would be pretty simple to crawl through.
Okay. And regarding the bed, when you say it's pulled away from the wall, are you saying that the headboard, which of course most people's bedrooms is right up against the wall, are you saying that the headboard where your head would be was not right next to the wall? Is that what you mean?
The headboard, it was not against the wall, and the bed was kind of put in a strange angle. So it was not up against two walls at all.
Okay.
It was just pulled
All right, so it's almost like, but not totally like, the bed is like almost in the middle of the room.
Yes, very close.
Okay. All right, so this is what is discovered, but any signs of violence?
It didn't appear that way, no.
All right. And when that happened, when they finally did get this building maintenance person, of course, who would have keys to all the apartments or condos, whatever you want to call them, was the Mustang there?
It was across the street at a different unit.
Okay, so it was there, but it was not in the place that Alwyn would usually park it. It was across the street. And is this the type of complex, like I can remember when I lived in Las Vegas, everybody had an assigned parking place? Is that the way it is in this particular complex?
I don't know they have assigned specific numbers. I don't remember seeing numbers on the drives there. But, you kind of have your favorite spot. And he had a place that he always used, but the Mustang was there the week prior to, when he was actually being looked for. It was in his favorite place of parking. Once the announcement has been made, his car is in a different parking slot across the drive area at a different unit.
Huh.
Unknown who would have moved it and or who would have put it in that parking spot.
Okay, so it was moved after Alwyn went missing.
Correct.
All right, so somebody had the keys. Somebody.
Right.
Okay. Now, the way we've, or you, or the police, whoever want this report, have come up with the date of July 6th, and we'll get into a little bit, of course, the details in a bit about what went on that day, but you have told me that that Alwyn had a habit of marking off the days on the calendar, and the calendar was in the apartment. And when was the last day that was marked off?
July 6th was marked off.
Okay. All right, so that's another very good way, if people still do that, marking off calendar days. That's another good way, maybe, to gauge when a person has gone missing. So what do the police do? I mean, obviously, your family's led inside there. He's not around. Does anybody go through the complex and see if anybody saw anything?
I don't know for sure. We were not able to get that information from the detective. It took 2 weeks before my aunt was getting very frustrated because she could never get information. So that's why I took over, and I called the detective 1 to 2 times a week and would ask specific questions. And he told me he would talk to Amanda. He had talked to Mavis. He did not say he had talked to residents.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to this. Now that we know that it's a pretty good idea about July 6th, when did you all first hear about this altercation, if we're to believe her, that happened on that date, July 6th, between Amanda and Alwyn? When did you and your family first hear about that?
The detective told us about it. He told me about it. Said that there was an argument about her driving the Mustang. That was detective number 1 who told me that. I got a little bit more and different information from detective number 2. Detective number 2 told me there was a dispute made by Amanda. 2 officers went to her apartment. She claimed that Alwyn was mad and was forcing his way into her apartment, and they talked to her for about 20 minutes. She did not want to file charges, so they left. And, of course, there's no details of what this complaint was other than Alwyn was trying to force herself in there.
And was there, and once again, it seems like the story maybe has changed a little bit. Did this have anything, to your knowledge, to do with the car that he got?
The first detective told me the argument was about the car. The second detective does not have that in the notes to tell me that.
Okay. Maybe we should just go over, just in case, maybe we should go over what the first detective told you. Something about her driving and hitting a curb or something.
Yes. I was told that she drove the car a couple of miles away to the local store and had run over a curb. Alwyn was not with her, and he got very upset because he had not paid for the car. And it was not his, he had an agreement that car was not going to move until he had paid for it.
All right, and so he was Alwyn was upset that she took the car for a drive, or was he more upset that she hit the curb? Once again, just what the detective said.
He did not indicate which one. Just overall, he was mad that she had driven the car and run over a curb. He put that all in one sentence.
Okay, thank you. And then this continues then that she calls the police. They show up. It seems fairly quickly. And she's claiming that Alwyn tried to force his way into her place and I guess was unsuccessful. We don't know, but she felt the need to call the police. And they show up. And at that point, while they were there, did they make any attempt to go over to his place across the street to talk to him?
No. I was told since she did not want to file charges, there was no need to talk to him.
Okay. Now, the thing is that he disappears that very same day. We are sure that the police are sure, and you are sure, your family's sure, that this all happened on the same day. That this claim that Amanda makes that Alwyn tried to force his way into her place, and then him disappearing, that all happened on the same day, July 6th.
Yes.
All right. And to remind the listeners that the calendar on in his place, the last day that was marked off was July 6th. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Now let's move on to this. This is what we usually call the rest of the case, and that is there is actually video of Alwyn that day. Have you seen that video?
I did see the video. I saw parts of the video.
All right, and what you seen? Can you describe it as best you can, there, Sherry?
Yes, Alwyn's walking down the middle of the road, the drive where you would drive and park. He was walking right down the middle of that road. He seemed very relaxed. He wasn't like looking over his shoulder, looking around to see if anybody was, to be talked to or to be followed by. He's just walking very casual. Matter of fact, a resident drives by and he even gave him a friendly wave. And he rounds the corner of the last apartment unit and has never been seen on video since.
And we should state, and maybe it's important for this for the listeners to know this. How long did it take before you were actually shown that video?
I saw it 1 year later.
So, like in the summer of 2020.
It was July 2020, like give or take a day or two of the original day of missing.
Okay. And listeners should know we're doing this interview on April 6th of 2021. So not even a year ago is when you finally got to see this video. You did not see it at the time. Did you even know that this video even existed?
I knew the video existed because Detective 1 told me we have not seen him since the 6th on the video that is available.
Okay. All right, and on this video, once again, it's shown he's walking, he's by himself. You even stated that another resident drives by him, they wave to each other, no big deal. And when you say he's walking out, around this building and then out of sight, would this be on the west side of the property, the east side? And I'll be doing a video so people I'll try to explain it the best of my knowledge, but I just want to make sure I am clear on this as well. The way you understand the video, was he walking west? Was he walking east? And was he, when he turned, did he go north? Did he go south? Can you even think of it in those terms?
Okay. He would be facing west as he was walking.
Okay.
And when he turned to go around the last unit, that would have been going towards the north or northwest.
All right. And listeners maybe should also understand, they'll see this in the video, is this not, this is a kind of a complex where there are 4 like condo apartments to a building. They're all one floor, and then there's another building, and then another building, and they're all one floor. It's not like, apartment building where we think like 2 stories, 3 stories, 4 stories, stacked on top of each other. These ones are just like 4 apartments to one building. They're all one level.
Yeah, each unit has 4 apartments in it.
Right. And there's quite a few there. There's like 50 units or 60 units, something like that.
Is there that many?
I think so. Maybe, I think at least 40. So that's pretty big. And
okay.
Yeah, given that they're separated, it does, cover a little bit of area there. And the people will see that in the video. So he's going west. And it shows him going north, making a turn north, so that would be turning to his right. He goes behind this, a building that is on the edge of the property, and it is never seen again. Anybody following? Anybody else that you saw walking in that video?
There wasn't anyone on that video except him.
Okay. All right.
I saw there.
Okay. And are we sure that is July 6th of 2019?
That's the stamp. What do you call it? The stamp mark
on the video, like you see in like the bottom right-hand corner or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now, what is also known about this video, is there a time on that video?
Yeah.
And
at 1:33 p.m. 1:33 p.m. is when he's walking down the road.
And at what time, the way the police explain it, what time did the police show up at that complex to speak to Amanda?
The police was speaking to Amanda 1:28 through 1:48.
So he's walking off on this video, walking off around this, of course, he might have come back. We're not going to get into that right at this point, but that video is taken at the very same time that Amanda is talking to the police in the very same complex.
Correct.
Huh. Okay. And do you think being that you've been to that complex, do you think where he was walking, do you think that he would have seen a police car parked there over at Amanda's side of the property?
Well, the video the angle of the video, I'm not sure where he's originally coming from.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was to look coming from his apartment, he should have seen the police there.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. So at the very same time, once again, we have to remind the listeners that allegedly he did something to Amanda. We're not saying that's the truth. It very well may be that she's making it up. I don't know if there's any proof or not to that. But either way, she calls the police, and they show up at 1:28, and then at 1:33, Alwyn is seen walking on this video and then around the building and is not seen on the video again. All right, thank you for explaining that, Sherry. I know it's very complex, but I think you did a very good job with that. Thank you. All right, being that this video was taken and it showed Alwyn walking off in a particular direction, of course, we know that he went missing. Any searches done, and there are some woods there, any searches done in that area, and when were they done?
Yes. We didn't know if the police was doing any searches, so we did a family search in those woods. And there's a post office right next door to the complex, and so that was that area was checked as well as across the highway So like in a 3-mile radius, the family, probably 60, 70 people were out there walking around checking and looking for him.
And no signs of him at all.
There was no signs. Nothing was located or found. You know, they're hoping to see a piece of his shirt or clothing or shoe or something, and nothing was located like that.
And when you saw him on the video, maybe I should have asked you this when we talked about the video, anything in his hands, him carrying anything, anything like that? Maybe a bag, maybe a jacket. I know it's July, but still, anything like that?
No, he was just kind of swaying his arms back and forth with a casual walk. He did not have anything in his hands or carrying anything on his back at all.
Okay. All right, and then these searches are done. It seems like they were done in a responsible way, in a logical way. And so you're saying that some people did actually go trekking through those woods, which I would say to be to the north/northwest of the complex. People did walk through there trying to find any sign of him.
Yes, but also northeast. There's some woods in the northeast.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay. So they did a search, no signs of him at all. Any sightings of him at all? Maybe if he did go into the woods and maybe came up on the other side somewhere, any particular sightings of him on that day? Anybody who looked like him? Anything?
No. On July 17th, I believe it was, someone called reporting someone that they thought was him walking down the highway. The police went out and it was someone else.
Okay. So it does seem that people did know about Alwyn's disappearance, if they're calling it in, saying that they thought somebody was him, and unfortunately it was not Alwyn, but people seem to be keeping their eyes peeled for him, and that's good. All right, so they go searching for him. Nothing is found, even though they know kind of the direction that he was headed, at least on the video, but he could have come back. Now, we've talked about that car, this black Mustang. What happened to it?
It just eventually disappeared. And I questioned Detective once. I questioned and said something about the car. And his response was, well, the owner has the right to sell it and get his money for it. I'm like, it's not even 3 weeks of missing. And he didn't want to elaborate on that idea at all.
Have you attempted, or has anybody in your family attempted to speak to the guy who had the black Mustang that allegedly sold it to Alwyn? Anybody ever talked to him outside of the police?
No, we didn't know who it was. I just learned the owner's name just a few days ago.
All right. Well, that I'm guessing that might be on your list of things to do then, there, which I think would be that'll probably be an interesting conversation. But what you're saying is Alwyn goes missing, and then his car, which, as you stated, was in one place when he went on, let's just say July 8th, but then it was somewhere else a few days later. His car eventually went missing as well, although not at the same time.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to this. We've mentioned her, Amanda Garcia. The police, of course, talked to her on July 6th because she called them. What have the police said about them interviewing her after Alwyn went missing?
The first detective had talked to her a few times, said that I feel like she knows something, but she won't share, as well as she was given a couple of polygraphs.
And how did she do on them, according to the first detective, if you can say?
She failed both polygraphs.
She failed. Okay.
Yes.
All right. And very early on in this conversation, when her name first came up, I said in quotation marks, Amanda Garcia. I've done, I think, my due diligence in trying to figure out who she is, and I still have to state as of this interview that I'm still not convinced that's her real name. It very well may be her first name, but her last name, I just don't know what to make of it. There aren't any Amanda Garcias in Gilmer, Texas. So it's hard to figure out, but that is the name that the police believe she has.
Yes, that's the name they gave, the detectives gave me.
Okay.
So they believe her name, Amanda Garcia.
All right. Was it you or somebody else in your family that at some point did have an encounter with her somewhere, maybe in the complex? She just said, "Well, I hope they find him." When did that happen? Where did that happen?
That was my aunt and uncle was driving through the complex, still trying to look for Alwyn, and she saw them and said, "I sure hope you find Alwyn." And that was after the public announcement on the local TV station saying that he was missing.
Okay. We know that you just stated she took these lie detector tests, failed. I'm not sure what that means. Certainly, it may be nothing. It may be something. We know that lie detectors are not, they can't be used in court, so I don't know if we should trust them or not. But do you believe, have the police given you the impression that she has been helpful? And do you know if she's ever offered up her own theory as to why her friend, maybe boyfriend, Alwyn, went missing?
Detective One said that he felt like she knew something, but she was not sharing any extra information, so that she did not offer any ideas, any theories. Just really didn't talk much about it at all. Detective 2 is waiting to find out what questions she failed so that he can then go forward with more questions.
I think that's a great idea. I like that thinking. Let's find out. It's not enough to know that she failed a polygraph. We have to know in particular what questions she failed. She might have passed 90% of them, but what's most important is what are the 10% that she failed. That's very interesting that he stated that. I like that idea. Very interesting. Okay. But she hasn't offered up any theories either as to what happened to him.
No.
Okay. Because, if person, care about people. Of course, I talk to guests every week, and they are full of theories, and because they care, they can't help but thinking that way. So, we're supposed to believe that Amanda cared about Alwyn. It seems to me, and she would know him well, that she would want to offer up, well, you know what, he was kind of feeling depressed, or, you know what, he was acting a little funny, but nothing like that.
Correct.
Okay. Now, we talked about his apartment. We talked about this window already. We'll get into that maybe a little more in a second. But maybe most importantly, when everybody got to go into the apartment, it was unlocked. His medication was left behind. Did you say that was kind of blood pressure medication? Is that right?
That's correct. Blood pressure medications was still there at his.
Okay. And you also told me, this could be something, that blood was found on at least one piece of clothing in his closet or somewhere. Was it you that came upon that? Was it somebody else? When did that happen? How did that happen?
The detective told my family that they were done with the apartment and the family needed to come and take his personal items so that the apartment could be rented out again. So both the sisters went up there with another family member to help them out. And my aunt's like, well, here's some clothes. I'm going to take these clothes because, she's still thinking maybe he's going to come home. Hopefully coming home, he's going to need some clothes. And they discovered after taking the clothing that there was blood on some of the pants and shirts.
Have you seen the clothes yourself?
I delivered a pair of pants to the detective for a DNA.
Wow. And, well, being that you saw the pants at least, please explain how big this blood mark was, what is your impression of it, etc.
The blood on the left top part of his pants. It wasn't like just a couple of drops of blood.
Mm-hmm.
There was a shirt that had blood on the left bottom part of the shirt, so we figured those were paired together.
Yeah.
But the detective took the pants.
Okay. Do you know if those pants have been tested to see if? I mean, once again, not to be flippant here or anything, but are we sure it's blood? It just wasn't red paint.
They took the pants and sent it to a crime lab, and we were told that they could not run DNA on it for whatever logistics that had to do with using family DNA versus the direct DNA of Alwyn.
Huh. Any explanation for that at all? They give you any explanation?
No, that was the explanation. They needed direct DNA of Alwyn to test the paint, because the way their lab was set up, they could only use victims' DNA.
Okay. All right, listeners are certainly probably going to think about that a little bit. Maybe the problem was that the blood had gotten on the clothes, and this blood may have had nothing to do with the disappearance, and the blood got on the clothes, and then they were washed. And, a lot of times blood cannot be washed out. And once you wash them, then you're not going to be able to get any DNA from that at all. The soap and everything will ruin it. Okay. Okay. All right, so there's blood on the clothes. And maybe, being that we're talking about the clothes, being that you saw the video, were the clothes that he was wearing in the video found in the apartment?
They are not the same clothes.
Not the same clothes. Okay. Let's move on to this. The window. You said it was open, and then you told me that somebody had closed it, and then it was open again. Okay. Anybody been able to explain this?
No, it was not explained. I addressed it with the detective a few times, and he never made a response to my comments about the window is open again.
All right, and no explanation from that, from the building people or anybody else?
That is correct.
All right. Let's move on to this. Now, you've told me that maybe there were some things of Alwyn's that were missing. What can you say about that?
There were some things that Alwyn had shared with his sister, telling her there was a couple of items that his girlfriend liked in the apartment. And this was some Cupid dolls and a old picture frame. And then as well, we knew he had a tackle box that he would keep small things in that was important to him, and a bag, a zippered bag similar to a bank bag or a pencil holder kind of bag. And he carried his checkbook and important papers, and that's where he put his cash instead of carrying a wallet. And when they were in the apartment to clear the apartment out, all of 4 of those items were totally missing. They never found those at all.
So some things that Alwyn said that Amanda would have liked just happened to be missing.
They were missing, yes.
Huh. Has the police, anybody else ever asked Amanda about that?
To my knowledge, no.
Okay. All right. And do these items have, of course, if it's cash, I mean, obviously that has value. Some of these other things, valuable or just personal keepsakes that he just happened to keep around?
I don't know know how old the Cupid dolls were? You know, those are things that you win at the fair. We have a Jamboree fair once a year. I don't know if they had been around for a while. If they were the ones that, you know, his mother had, then they were old. Probably, you know, those could be worth something. The picture, the old picture frame, it's just kind of unique. And that's one reason my aunt realized it was missing, because she started thinking, I wonder if that's, you know, a family member in that picture. And was hoping to take it, and it wasn't there when they were clearing the apartment. You know, maybe he had a couple of old coins, you know, a silver dollar or, you know, something like that. That's about it.
Okay, and those
The
things...
money was probably the most valuable, unless those Cupid dolls was old, and I don't know about that.
Okay. That is interesting. Okay. And we have to remember, maybe somebody got in through that window. I guess it's possible. All right, somebody we haven't talked about for a while is Mavis Waters, who also lived in the complex, a few years younger than Alwyn, but not, I guess, young. He was, I guess, in his 60s, maybe still is. And were he and Amanda an item?
Apparently, she claimed Mavis as her boyfriend and not Alwyn.
Were Mavis and Amanda living together?
No, they lived in the same unit, so there were two apartments in between them.
Okay. Do you have any idea what Mavis has said about Alwyn's disappearance?
No, not at all.
No. Okay. Did the police talk to him? Did he ever take a lie detector test?
The police would try to talk to Mavis, and the detective told me he was always drunk and he never could get him sober enough to ask him any real questions. So he could not bring him in for a polygraph. Probably 4 to 6 weeks later, Mavis agreed to a polygraph.
And did he pass?
He did pass the polygraph.
All right. So Mavis passes a lie detector test, but Amanda does not. Maybe at this point, I should ask, does Amanda have any family members, sons, daughters who live in the Gilmer, Texas area?
To our knowledge, she has a father who comes and stays for a while, but that's all that we've ever heard about family.
Okay. And he coincidentally lives here in Florida somewhere, right? Coincidentally.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And we may have to remind the listeners that Alwyn claimed before he went missing that he had to chase Mavis off with a pocket knife for some reason. We do not know the details of that. And I'm not saying that necessarily that Alwyn is a liar, but we just don't have a lot of information regarding that. We don't know the reason. Nobody called the police. We're really just taking Alwyn's word for that. I did look up Mavis Waters. He does have an extensive criminal record. And being that the police said that he was always drunk is not a surprise because he has several DUIs. But nothing that I could find, although he did have a resisting arrest, but that could be a variety of things. That doesn't necessarily mean it was necessarily violent. No violence against women, no rapes, anything like that. Regarding Alwyn, was he an able-bodied guy? I mean, how far do you think he could have walked if he did walk off?
Alwyn was capable of walking, yes, but he was like 250 pounds and did get winded. So I would say if he walked a far distance, he's going to stop and rest before he walks more.
Okay. And regarding this video, maybe we need to talk about the video a little bit more. Was there just one camera in the complex, not multiples, only pointing one direction? Would there have been other cameras that could have seen him coming back to the complex if he came back another direction, the way you understand it?
The camera that shows Alwyn was the one and only working camera for the complex.
Okay.
The post office is just right there at that end of the road, and their camera had already done a rotation in a like a reboot and start over.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it videotaped over itself.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So those are the major facts of Alwyn's disappearance. Walked off camera, might have come back, maybe not. We have a couple suspicious characters here. Things missing. Alwyn's car goes missing a short time later. Maybe that's something that you'll be able to look into, Sherry, being that you now have the person's name who sold it to Alwyn. What has this been like? I mean, you never knew that you'd have to do something like this. What's this been like for your family?
Well, as I said, the family is older. They've always looked out for their younger brother, and they're nervous wreck and worry over him. They're just unsettled about, is he okay? Did he get killed? Did he pass out from the heat and have a heart attack?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the what if is just driving them crazy.
Yeah. Being that he was the youngest child, the youngest brother, the youngest child, and this story that Amanda had about Alwyn trying to get into her place, in their opinion, does that sound like something that Alwyn would have done?
Alwyn was crazy about Amanda, and he would do anything to protect her. So, I think that her disappointing him and doing something to, set him off to make him mad would be hurtful to him. So, yeah, he's going to get mad and yell and try to straighten things out.
And once again, we're not saying we believe Amanda. We're not saying we don't believe Amanda. Unfortunately, there's only two people who might have been a party to it. One of them is missing, and the other person, I don't know how you disprove or prove her story. But
right. Yeah, we do not have that information.
Right. But what I guess I'm saying is that would his siblings be surprised if he acted violently toward a woman?
Get mad, yes. Violent, I don't think so.
Okay. And does Alwyn seem like the type of guy that would walk away when the police show up? Because we have to admit, that's when he walked off, is when the police showed up. Any insight into the people who knew him best regarding that fact of this disappearance?
Alwyn sees the police, and he knows he was just having an argument with Amanda. Yeah, he's going to be scared, not knowing what in the world she told on him. And yeah, he's going to be scared. I would too.
Okay. All right. What has this been like for you, Sherry? You have, of course, your own life. You have your own parents. You've told us that you're the caretaker for them. How has this affected you emotionally and mentally over the last, almost 2 years?
It's very time consuming. I'm a personality that I have a job, and my job is to do my job fully. And I was not satisfied when my aunt, I'd call and ask, what do you know? What's the update? Because I don't know anything. I should be so frustrated.
Yeah.
So I was like, I can do that. I've got a lot on my plate, but that's something I can do. I know what to do. I can ask a lot of questions. And so it's time consuming, but, Alwyn's a person. And it doesn't matter if he was killed or he just passed out somewhere. He deserves to, have a record to clarify that he's died in a certain way and be able to get this death certificate
How has his...
it's worth the time to do that.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. How has his... what has his son said about all this?
His son's not in great health. So, he is upset over it. For example, things were being posted on Facebook from different organizations or newscasts, and he got a little upset. And he goes, does anybody really know my dad's age? Because it's different each time you read an article. So, he's a little perturbed at how they're trying to find this man, but they can't even get the information correct.
Right.
So, he's taking it a little personal, for sure.
If you can say, has his son ever offered up any theories? Has his son ever attempted to go to talk to Amanda? I realize that Amanda is not his mother or anything. It was just his father's girlfriend. Maybe they weren't even boyfriend and girlfriend, but that's what Alwyn thought. Has his son ever attempted to talk to Amanda about all this? Do you know?
No, he hasn't really gotten involved. Just something stressed you out, and he knows that's something that would stress him out. So he has just not really been too involved in that.
Okay. And like you said, he's not in the best of health. I'm guessing he's maybe in his 50s? Somewhere in his 50s?
Yeah, probably mid-50s.
Okay, and not in the greatest of health.
Right.
Okay. All right, so this has been tough all around. We have older siblings in their 80s, if not 90s. And they have, of course, their own health issues going on, stresses that come with that age. And then their little brother goes missing. And then you, not expecting to ever do something like this. You have your own life, but you're doing this. And then the son has his own things going on. A lot of stress. A lot of grief being spread around here. Sherry, do you have a Facebook page or anything else set up?
We do not have a designated Facebook page.
Okay.
We have shared missing persons flyers among the family, but there is not a designated page.
Okay. We might think about that. I'm not saying, I think it's a good idea, but you're going to do what you're going to do. I know it takes some work, and it takes some management of that, and it sounds like you have enough going on already with all of this. But I do know that Facebook pages, of course, raise the profile of disappearances. It certainly helps get more people, knowledgeable regarding a missing person. I think everybody who's been on the program would say that, but that's totally up to you because it would just be more work. I mean, there's no denying that. So you have to make that decision for yourself. But I know that some of my listeners have helped guests set up Facebook pages. If that is something that sounds interesting to you, if you'd be interested in that, you let me know. All right, and maybe we can make something. We can make something happen for you regarding that, regarding a Facebook page, and start getting people more eyeballs on Alwyn's disappearance. Of course, Facebook, of course, very, very popular. Any final words before we complete this interview, Sherry?
I can't think of anything. You know how that works. You hang up and then you'll think of something.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that is true. I suffer that myself sometimes with interviews, and sometimes there's questions that I wish I would have asked and didn't. But maybe I kind of put you a little bit on the spot there. Okay, well, that's fine. Okay.
As far as you helping out and reaching out, I mean, I appreciate that because, there's always avenues and thought processes that works differently with different people. And then you being in a position that you've interviewed several people in this position, you've got some key ideas and thoughts for me to keep moving on. I mean, when I send an email to the detective, it's not a one-question email. I have like 4 or 5 questions every time I email him.
Great. I love it. That's the way it should be. That's excellent. And that is, you're right, that is one of the one of the roles that I fill. I'm not just a podcaster. I'm not just an interviewer. When you cover as many disappearances as we have on Unfound, you do start to see patterns, and you start to see things that people aren't doing, just maybe little holes that maybe can just, firm things up a little bit more here and there, and that's what I try to do. Also, in addition to everything else that we do, I try to do that with guests behind the scenes, and I want to continue to do that for you, in any way, that I can help, for sure.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that.
You're welcome, and I appreciate you being on this episode of Unfound.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. And that was my April 6th, 2021 interview with Sherry Sullivan, niece of Alwin Albright. I thank her for joining me and all of you on the program. As was stated during the interview, there's now a video available on the Unfound YouTube channel, in which I diagram the apartment complex and the surrounding area and the search areas. Please check it out. After the interview was over, Sherry discovered she wanted to cover a couple more topics, so I will mention those right now. Police got access to Mavis's phone records and pings. One of those pings came from the Kelsey Bottom area, just after Alwyn went missing. I point out that area on the YouTube video. It was searched using people and dogs. Nothing was found. Several days after Alwyn went missing, a report came in of a white male being abducted in the Gilmer Plaza and being shoved into a van. I point out this area on the YouTube video as well. There's no evidence that white male was Alwyn. Moreover, there's no evidence that abduction ever happened. Dogs were used at the plaza. They didn't pick up Alwyn's scent there. And both of those searches were done in September of 2019, 2 months after Alwyn went missing. So those are the additional items not covered in the interview. When I think about Alwyn's disappearance, the most similar case that jumps out at me is T.J. Murray's, the first episode of Unfound for 2021. Both men allegedly, more probable in TJ's situation than in Alwyn's, struck women before disappearing. And as I stated back in January with TJ's, what I think helps in analyzing these types of cases is getting into the mind of the missing man at the time. Because for both men, even though they are roughly 50 years apart in age, they sound very much alike. Good guys. No complaints about either of them. Close to their families. No history of violence. Then they go and allegedly commit acts that are outside their character. If you will remember, I stated at the time with TJ's, he had to think the slapping victim would call the police on him. A very reasonable assumption, and that could have caused him to run off. I'm not saying you need to believe that. All I'm saying is that it is a possibility. It very well could be that people tracked TJ down that night and murdered him. Certainly possible. However, we know that the police never got involved that night. Why? Because the victim never called 911. Well, the guessing we have in TJ's of whether he suspected the police would come after him or not is a certainty in Alwyn's. Amanda did call 911, and the police did show up, and Alwyn left while they were there. The correlation and causation are obvious, while they are not obvious in TJ's. I'm not saying I believe Alwyn hit Amanda or forced his way into her apartment, but that Alwyn leaving is more than a good sign that it happened. So, Alwyn leaves. A search is done, but he isn't found. The main question then is, how far could a 74-year-old go on a hot July Texas day, especially through the woods? And that brings us to the possibility that I just mentioned in TJ's case. Revenge. Did somebody get it for what Alwyn allegedly did to Amanda? What facts are there that could support that? The open window. The bed moved away from the wall. Blood on his clothes. Mavis having an extensive criminal history, although nothing necessarily violent except resisting arrest, which could mean anything, although he and Alwyn did have that prior run-in. Items that Amanda wanted that ended up being missing from Alwyn's apartment. None surely definitive, but it would be nice if there were explanations. But since I don't do theorizing on this program, you can analyze those points and anything else regarding Alwyn's disappearance as you define the term walk-off for yourself. I'll leave the theorizing up to you. And that's the program. If you found it informative, please go to the app that you use to listen to Unfound and give this podcast a nice review. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've been listening to Unfound.